Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome back to Dear Student. This is me, Sidra Khalil, your course instructor, modern novel. In first part of our today's lecture, we have discussed about irony and symbolism of the novel Heart of Darkness. And in today's lecture, we are going to discuss imagery in Heart of Darkness, a novel, a novella written by Joseph Conrad. So actually imagery is what that how the writers they create the image in the mind of the readers that gives the we can say the different meaning in understanding the analysis of the novel. So Heart of Darkness, there are a lot of vivid imageries are used by Conrad to depict the dark and barren landscape of the Congo, as well as the depraved state of native people and colonizers' wasted efforts. The imagery serves not only as a description but also enhances the plot and adds deeper meaning. It reveals the hypocrisy of colonizers wasting resources while the natives starve. Kurtz comes to represent that darkness within the humanity as his exposure to the Congo causes him to lose his grip on civilization. Marlowe develops a complex loyalty to the curse, recognizes his evil, but still protecting his memory, suggesting Marlowe himself was susceptible to the corrupting influences of the jungle. The novel uses imagery and insights into the character's mind to powerfully portray imagery in a Heart of Darkness. So, Heart of Darkness is a remarkable book by virtue of its imagery also. Conrad here gives us ample evidence of his descriptive powers. The imagery in this book is remote and wild, but it is also described in such a graphic manner that we begin actually to visualize it. It is employed not only to add visual aid but to enhance the plot, action, and to give a deeper meaning to the story and structure and narrative techniques employed by the author. Imagery at disposal is dark, savage, and barren, not only in the portrayal of the landscape but also the characterization of the characters. Like the title, darkness pervades all and encompasses all and all around. There is imagery elaborated in Marlowe's description of things at certain points in his narration. For instance, his description of blasting of a rock with a gunpowder when the rock does not stand in the way of the building of the railway line is surely ironical. Ironical also is his description of the warship firing its guns without any purpose. The supposed purpose of the firing of these guns is to destroy the enemy, but no enemy is visible anywhere in the forest, and the warship is merely wasting its ammunition. There is also irony in the fact that although the white man has brought a lot of machinery into the dark country of the Congo, the machinery is lying unused. So equally ironical is the fact that although there are heaps and heaps of rivets lying at one of the company's station, no rivets are made available to Marlowe for the repairing of the wrecked steamer which he has been able to pull out of the riverbed. All this imagery not only stands serve for ironic usage but also suggests how resources are at waste in Congo. It also underlines with the hidden meaning of the waste of time and effort by the white man. It indicates actually the hypocrisy of the white men who are simply wasting time and effort to show that some kind of constructive work is going on. This waste of effort and the unused machinery lying in the grass offer a sharp contrast to the starving natives. The whole effort of the imagery in the Heart of Darkness is actually the white man is completely misdirected. It is a sad commentary on the efficiency of the white man that Marlowe should not be able to get any rivets to repair the wrecked ship for weeks when these are needed badly. The imagery goes hand in hand with the action and the flow of plot, adding more character to it. The sight scenes by Marlowe when he has got down from the Swedish captain's steamer are of a very depressing kind. These sights depict the wretchedness and the misery of the natives of the Congo and the sheer futility of the white man seemingly useful work. Marlowe sees a lot of black people, mostly naked, moving about like ants. Later, he sees half a dozen men chained to one another and each wearing an iron collar on his neck. These men are criminals. Actually, they are not the criminals, they are the Native Africans who have violated the laws and are being punished with hard labor under the orders of the white rulers of the country. Marlowe feels deeply upset to see this sight. Going further, he sees black figures crouching under the trees, leaning against the trunks and clinging to the earth. These men, says Marlowe, were dying slowly. These men were not enemies, they were not criminals, they were only black figures who are actually representing the disease and starvation. And they are also lying in the state of confusion in the gloom of the trees. Here, Marlowe again feels as if he has entered into the gloomy circle of some inferno. Now it is made obvious to us that white man's indifference and his unconcern are responsible for this state of affairs. Marlowe has described these sights in order to convey to the carelessness of the white man towards the natives. Marlowe's reflections upon his cannibal crew are also noteworthy. Here again, he records his mental reactions to an outward situation. The crew consists of cannibals who would like to eat human flesh to satisfy their hunger. They could easily kill the white men on board the steamer and eat their flesh, but they did not do so. Marlowe feels amazed to find that in spite of their gnawing hunger, they did not kill the white man on board. Marlowe looks at these cannibals with great curiosity about their impulses, their motives, their capacities, and their weaknesses as well when brought to the test of an unbearable physical necessity. Marlowe asks whether it was superstition, patience, fear, or some kind of a primitive honor which prevented those cannibals from attacking the white man. It takes a man all his inborn strength to fight hunger properly. It has been said by Marlowe. It is really easier to face the death of a close relative than to face prolonged hunger. It is easier to endure dishonor and even the damnation of one's soul than to bear the pangs of hunger. Marlowe is therefore over here filled with admiration for the self-restraint of those cannibals is not killing the white men and eating their flesh to appease their hunger. Here again, the savages are seen more civilized than the actual civilized men who came to educate them, who came to make them civilized. The imagery here juxtaposes a question of contrast between the apparent and the reality. Darkness is evident throughout the entire novel, and it is important enough to even garner a part in the title. It is difficult to discern the exact meaning of darkness as it shrouds everything in the novel, including those things generally considered bright. The metaphorical nature of the darkness evolves into a representation of the darkness hidden in the heart of every human, especially men. Kurtz represents the dark side of mankind and what it transfers you into if it encases you completely. His constant and prolonged exposures to the untamed regions of the Congo cause him to lose grip with civilization and the morals associated with it. His complete decline is finalized through his last words, the horror, the horror. The facts about Mr. Kurtz are certainly very intriguing, but so are Marlowe's reactions to those facts. In fact, we feel as deeply interested in Marlowe's mental makeup as we feel in that of Mr. Kurtz. Mr. Kurtz has now become an embodiment of evil, corrupted nature is there, so that it seems to Marlowe that Mr. Kurtz has taken a high seat among the devils of the land. And here Marlowe once again talks about the need of inner strength in a man. If a man has to face such grim facts as the devilry of Mr. Kurtz, you must fall back upon your own innate strength, upon your own capacity for faithfulness. Says Marlowe, if you are to face the terror of the scandal or the gallows or the lunatic asylum. Furthermore, Marlowe now speaks about the spell which Mr. Kurtz's reputation has begun to cast upon his own mind. So Marlowe here says that subsequently he became a devoted friend of Mr. Kurtz and that Mr. Kurtz was able to conquer his soul. Marlowe also tells us here that his soul was neither rudimentary nor tainted with selfishness. After meeting that man, Marlowe begins really to admire him despite the man's demonic character. In fact, Marlowe now becomes deeply devoted to Mr. Kurtz and goes to the extent of saying that he would never betray him and that it had already been ordained that he would remain loyal to him always. Marlowe admits that Mr. Kurtz was a nightmare, but he still maintains that he would never betray him because Mr. Kurtz was a nightmare of his choice. When Mr. Kurtz has slipped away from the ship's cabin into the forest in response to the call of the wilderness, Marlowe shows his loyalty by chasing him into the forest and persuading him to return to the ship. Thus, Marlowe has developed a keen personal interest in that man, whose evil he also recognizes fully. Even after returning to Europe, Marlowe remains loyal to Mr. Kurt's memory because when Mr. Kurt's fiancée asks him what Mr. Kurt's last words before death had been, Marlowe tells her a lie and says that Mr. Kurt's last words had been her own name. Now, this loyalty to Mr. Kurtz again means only one thing. As Mr. Kurtz had done no favor to Marlowe, this loyalty can only be interpreted as Marlowe's own response to the primitivism and barbarism which Mr. Kurtz had been practicing among the savages. This means that if Marlowe had stayed for some time longer in the Congo and had begun to mix with the savages, he too would have followed the same path which Mr. Kurtz has begun to tread. It is here that we really find Marlowe's subconscious mind working. Conrad, through his peep into the subconscious and letting the reader sip deep into the imagery and working of the mind, has been able to convey to us indirectly and subtly the influence of Mr. Kurt's primitivism upon himself, without being able to define that influence in specific and explicit terms. It is in the last one-third of the novel that Marlowe tries to lay bare in his subconscious mind. Hence, imagery intensifies the use of symbolism, similes, metaphors, and personification. The narrative technique is profound and is made more sublime owing to the dark, pessimistic imagery employed to describe the people and condition of the people in Congo. So, Conrad has masterfully used this technique together with the peep into the subconscious to depict a very bold, glaring, and fiery image of Congo in demise of at the hands of the civilized. The mirroring effect is made exuberant with the details and interpretation that the imagery adds to the story, therefore rendering the Heart of Darkness an explicit elaboration of effective technical dexterity and impressionism. So this is all about our today's lecture. In today's lecture, we have discussed in detail about different imageries that has been used by Joseph Conrad in his novel Heart of Darkness. I hope so that students, you all listen it and learned it, and you all have understand all these points. So this is our end of our today's lecture as well, and end of our novel Heart of Darkness as well. From the next week, we are going to start our new novel. Stay blessed. Allah Hafiz.